Hello, everyone. My name is Jamie Rogers. I work at Darwin Recruitment. Thanks for joining us this evening on what is are we live? No? We are live. Right. Well, so I don't know how many of you guys would have seen that, but we are now definitely 100% live. So my name is Jamie Rogers. I'm a PHP and front-end recruiter in Germany at Darwin. And we've decided to host this kind of vodcast webinar e-meetup thing to talk about something crazy with JavaScript. The purpose of this whole thing is just to try and get some thought-provoking discussions out there. Maybe some of you guys, especially the younger members of our audience, will learn a few things from considering something that may not ever happen in the real world. I don't think NASA will ever launch a rocket with JavaScript, but just some of the things you'd have to consider if you did this could be quite good. So this evening, I'm joined by two people. Sebastian Golesch from Germany. He's quite a senior figure at Deutsche Telekom in Germany. And Gassan Chenwar, who is a senior software engineer from a media distribution business in Stockholm in Sweden. So these guys know way more about JavaScript than I do. So we're going to start by just exploring this question of how would you launch a rocket with JavaScript? So Sebastian is going to start us off.
Yeah, first of all, Jamie, thank you for asking me to take part in this. I think that's a really interesting idea, what we're trying to do here, the vodcast thingy, as I've just learned. And yeah, and also thanks for the intro. And well, good evening, or whatever time it is you watch, to the viewers of this. So yeah, a rocket with JavaScript. Like, let's assume we're on a peace mission here, so launching a rocket into space and ignoring the other things you can do with rockets. Yeah, is it a good idea? Oh my God, it's really hard to think about, like, even trying to answer that, like finding a way to start. First of all, the first question, like when I heard this question that popped up in my mind is like, well, why not? It's like, okay, so we've done lots of things with JavaScript that JavaScript never was meant to do when it was invented. So why the heck? We just could do this. And I mean, technically it's possible. JavaScript has all the features if you consider Node and various other implementations of JavaScript with interfaces that JavaScript can adapt to. I definitely think we could do something like this. But I also think you could do it in basically any language you want. Like if you want to do it in Perl or in COBOL or whatever language you can think of, I bet you could do it.
So if you were actually going to do this in JavaScript, what are the, relative to JavaScript, what are the immediate challenges that you would foresee trying to do a task of this scale, this complexity, with this many moving parts? What are the immediate weaknesses or strengths of JavaScript that would make this a difficult task? And what kind of like architecture and design decisions would you have to consider before you even begin writing your first line of code?
Well, first of all, JavaScript has a few flaws. So, for example, like its error recovery mechanism isn't as well designed for a job like this as, well, other languages where you could either write your own error recovery stack or that have something like this implemented, or even are compiled languages, so you have a compiler check up front that eliminates errors and gives you quite some feedback. So I would probably, on a project that scale, opt in for a language that transpiles to JavaScript, maybe TypeScript, or have a type checker or Flow, something like that. Because first of all, I want my code as, well, error-free as I could, because it's then probably a lot of money or even lives would depend on it. And second, if something goes wrong unexpectedly, I would like to have a language that gives me some, well, powers to recover from that failure. And JavaScript, well, it spits out an error stack, a stack trace that maybe not even isn't always the best thing when it comes down to debugging, especially async functionality. So definitely, I would first of all focus on the really, really bad things that could happen, and would design the system to be as resilient to errors. And if an error pops up, to be as, well, to be able to recover from it as to the best of its, well, possibilities.
So is there an example where maybe you could take like one of those weaknesses of JavaScript, give like maybe a real world example of what that would look like, and then is there a tool, a library, a framework that could be a workaround or that could compensate for the most glaring problems that you would have in a big task like this with JavaScript?
Yeah, I just faced a problem like this actually today on my screen, where I was working on a Node.js API server written in Express, and that involves some async functionality. And the call was made, and all I got was like a 3-line stack trace. Something deep in Node was going wrong, and I had no further information how to debug this. And that was actually, well, not a pleasant situation. So I tried out different tools I had in my stack to, and did throw them on a problem. And there's actually one tool I would really like to recommend, which is called Long John.
We are joined by Maxim. Maxim, how you doing?
Do you hear me well?
Yeah, we're good. So you managed to get here in time. So for everyone who's watching, this is Maxim Saunikov. He's an entrepreneur. He's a full stack developer from Oslo, Norway. And so Maxim wasn't sure if he was going to be able to get with us on time, and we almost didn't think he would join us in the rain or the snow or what was going to happen. You can see, I guess, the aftermath of a storm behind him there, and he will be, or he makes our third speaker of the evening. So thanks for finally finding us, Maxim. But Sebastian, let's get back to your answer. Sorry for the interruption there.
No problem. Hi, Maxim. Nice to meet you. So there are tools like Long John I've mentioned that could, well, get better async stack traces, or if you when you're working with event emitters, etc., out of it. And another tool that is kind of related to this, that is real, like a gem for all of us in our project on a day-to-day basis, is Sentry, which is just a tool that you can send bug reports to, which is especially wonderful for front-end development, because in your production system, if there's an error in the browser of your customer, you actually most of the time never knew it happened. And if you have some kind of analytics that tell you, oh, there was an error, you probably have no chance to dig into that or debug that. But Sentry, for example, just takes that error, takes the environment it happened in, which browser, takes the stack trace, and maybe also if you have the source maps, so you can really pinpoint what is going wrong on the customer's machines, so that are out there. And if I were to do a project on that scale, like we talked about, then I probably would throw tools like this in a stack as a standard thing, because that is the only way I could gain control over the code that is then, well, let's say, floating out there in space.
Okay, so I guess some of the other big challenges with a project like this that would be transferable to an everyday project that actually happens in the real world would be the I guess the scale of the project. So when anyone is working on large JavaScript projects, from a scalability perspective, what would be like the biggest challenges with this, and how do you manage huge projects? How do you maintain performance on something this large?
I don't know if performance would actually be the issue. I think performance-wise, code-wise is fine. Team performance, if you're referring to that, could probably only achieve through slicing the parts in tiny packages and having everyone in the project working on his little part or her little part, and then, well, just hope that we're not getting into the Apollo 11 situation where in the end the pieces don't fit well together and the astronauts are not able to enter the rescue pod. So yeah, I'd probably say slice the features into small components and then well define the interfaces between them. Because when I take a look at what we're really doing, we have a project that is running for 7 years now with a lot of different parts, UI, backend side, software running on people's homes, on routers, etc. And the only way is that by distributing and slicing the parts of the software and having 2 or 3 people at max working at the same time on one component. Because otherwise, well, we've seen that hell breaks loose.
Okay, so can you think of what would be the biggest reasons to do this? You know, what case does JavaScript have to be the chosen language for a project like this?
Well, one could say you probably can teach people JavaScript in a short amount of time. So compared to low-level languages like C, where you have a steep learning curve at the beginning, JavaScript is extremely forgiving. And if you have, let's say, modern languages like Rust, who are way better, who are managing this learning curve way better for newcomers, they're still very hard to get their heads around. So if you're really short on people, then you can train your own people quite easily. Probably not for the real crucial rocket launching stuff, but for some parts, like, I don't know, interfaces in a rocket or something like that, which is absolutely a field where I would trust anyone with a bit of understanding of computers to get ramped up in a very short amount of time.
Okay. And what about the opposite? What are the biggest reasons not to use JavaScript for a task like this?
Because it was never designed to do something like this. So, I mean, if you think about that, it was initially designed to, well, maybe animate some things in a browser or have some kind of form field magic. I mean, it developed to be something way more sophisticated and something different than initially. But yeah, I think you want to have a language where you can have the full control over the stack. And also, if you're interfacing with hardware, most of the time, you need some kind of low-level wrapper that you need to have to write in C or Rust or whatever. And basically, you would just, well, wrap the low-level code with JavaScript, and then, well, you don't have it all under your control anymore. And there's some parts of your stack you might not understand, or you might not be able to work on, or just a few people on your team. And yeah, so I would say that is the biggest weakness, because it is not a low-level language. It is not a compiled language, and you always would need to have something else to interface with the hardware. Is that true?
Cool. Well, look, you've answered some weird questions very nicely. So thanks for your input there, Space. And I hope there is we're not in a real room, so I hope there is a ripple of virtual applause going out across wherever people are watching this. So thanks so much for that. And now I'm curious to find out, Gaston, how you would launch a rocket with JavaScript.
Hey, Jamie. First, I would like to thank you for inviting me here. And I'm happy to be part of European webinar about JavaScript for once. So, yeah. So I think launching a rocket using JavaScript is such a quite big idea and complex to begin with. And it needs like multiple components. So for me, when approaching this matter, I will approach it from what JavaScript does the best, which is building web-based applications. Thus, when I'm going to build a rocket, I will focus on one part of this process, which is building a simulator that will handle the events. Sorry?
Sorry, Maxim, sorry. Sorry, Gaston. We're just having technical problems in our office. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
So to begin with, like when launching a rocket using JavaScript, I will focus on building a simulator that will do the job for us, actually. So, and this is like feasible because we can generate events over time and compute like the rocket position over time and simulating the different forces from the environment, such like gravity, air resistance, and calculate the force generated by the rocket in order to compute how and simulate how the rocket would launch. And that's an essential part of a successful launch, I think.
So that's a pretty smart idea to me. So you're kind of playing to JavaScript's strengths and saying, like, how can we visualize and maybe forecast this before the event actually happens? So, I mean, are there any JavaScript tools, products, or anything that you would use to create a simulation like this? Or could you do basically the whole thing with JavaScript?
Yeah, I think creating a simulator can be done only by JavaScript through like modern frameworks. I think we can use like 3GS just to design how to simulate the rocket, but we can use like powerful powerful libraries like reactive programming, ArcGIS or something to generate and handle the events. This is big, and I think JavaScript will handle this better than any language, and then we can create a successful launch through successful simulation and predict how the rocket would launch.
Okay. So to me, I'm not a developer, but that sounds like there'd be a huge amount of like mathematics and algorithms that would have to be in place for a simulation like that to work. So yeah, I mean, to a non-developer, that's surprising that you could do so much with JavaScript, because that just is the opposite of what I imagine it being used for. So do people do this in the real world? Is there some transferable here to projects you've done in the past?
I didn't work on such project, but I imagine like it's feasible because the same basic ideas we are using it on a daily basis during our projects and developing our projects. So like, for example, for mathematics, we are using basic mathematics all the time on our work, and we are implementing these using JavaScript. And a computer is just a machine that will compute data for us. And computing is based on mathematics. So anything can be implemented using JavaScript. And building a powerful simulator is, I think, would be, yeah, would do the job for us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if someone came to you with this project and said,
Yes.
you know, we're going to launch a rocket with JavaScript, and Gassan, you're our guy, you're going to do it. What would be your immediate concerns? What are the first things that would leap out to you and make you think, okay, this is going to be difficult and these are the reasons why?
My main focus, first thing, I will think about time delivery, because I would like to deliver the project on time. So any project can be, I think, delivered, but it depends when it is delivered. So I would like to organize my team and organize my development process in order to deliver such a project on time, or at least be close to the time, to delivery time. And that's really important. And in such case, I think I would rely on using frameworks. I would rely on using reliable testing, unit testing. I would rely on using modularity in order to reuse our code and organize our code base. So I think these are the main ideas that I will be focusing on in order to create a successful project and deliver it close to the time.
So I guess your immediate concern is this isn't the right tool for the job. It's going to take me a long time to make this happen. And then you're thinking about, how do I kind of minimize that? How do I optimize the delivery of something like this, even though I'm using the wrong tools? Okay, that's interesting. And what strengths might JavaScript have here? What would you be excited about doing with JavaScript beyond the animation that would, you know, actually make this project maybe easier than using another language?
I think JavaScript is a modern language, and it is becoming more modern with such like base languages built on JavaScript, like TypeScript, with the powerful frameworks that are backed by powerful companies, from React backed by Facebook, or Angular backed by Google. So, and it has a huge open community that is delivering high quality libraries that are accessible for free on the internet, that would help us to deliver fast projects and with high quality standards. So I think JavaScript has, and we can see this on GitHub, like there are so many libraries right now and they are increasing. And I think for a good programming language to thrive is to have a big community, active community, that would help us to deliver projects and create growth in the JavaScript world.
That's a good point. So beyond the language itself, you know, different languages have different communities with them, some more active than others. And I think you're right. There would be a lot of people you could turn to for support, ideas online, or colleagues, or anywhere for this kind of thing. So there's something that I would never have thought of, the kind of externals that come with a language that may actually have a direct impact on what you're doing with it, how a project goes, what other resources you have for it. So I mean, you've answered a tough question very well, Gassan. So thank you so much for your input. And we're going to switch to Maxim now. Maxim, can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you very, very well. Do you hear me?
Let's see. I think we might be having some connection problems with you, Maxim. I'm not getting any audio for you at the moment.
Just a second.
Here we go. We're up.
Okay. Do
we
you hear
can
me
hear
well?
you.
Awesome, awesome. Because
we can hear you now.
I see and hear you very, very well. And
good.
Yeah, so first, thank you for having me here. It's a huge pleasure to join such a nice meeting, and I love the idea of these events. I hope you'll hold them with some periodicity, right? I hope this is not the last one.
Me too.
First, just 15 seconds about why I'm here inside of the storm. So the plan was to have this call from my hotel, and I'm on travel today from Oslo, where I live, to Croatia, Split, where we have team meeting. But it stormed in the city, and I landed in different city and had a flight to this city, and now I'm trying to catch a ferry to the island where my hotel is. And I have some 3 minutes, and definitely I want to dedicate them to you folks and to all the community. I hope there are more folks who watch us. And answering on the question, can we use JavaScript to launch a rocket? I look at this from different angle. So maybe my points will be not very practical, but let's dream. And let's have a look on JavaScript, not only as a language, but more like, I don't know, environment where we build and run our app. So this will be not about like a language syntax and constructions, but about the browsers and of course community. So let me then list positive and negative moments of what I came up with. First, let's start from good ones, right? Community, it's huge, and not huge, but the largest one. And if we have approximately 20 million of IT developers, then 70% of them say that they know JavaScript, of course, to some extent, right? And it's not just numbers from the air, it's according to the latest Stack Overflow survey. So first, community, then we can find really talented people from this huge amount of developers, right? Next, our rocket is quite complex hardware object, if not the most complex on the Earth one, right? And we definitely need some access to its hardware, and JavaScript is really good on that. If yeah, again, I'm about dreaming, right? Current state of JavaScript and browser environments are so nice that we can use all these media possibilities, sensors, GPS, whatever, straight from our JavaScript code without need to have any other wrappers. So if we plan to launch a rocket, let's just create corresponding APIs and we'll trigger them directly. Why not? Next point. JavaScript historically, as we already mentioned here, was invented for some interactivity on the web page, right? Some like to add the snowflakes during Christmas time, and no one knew that today we are trying to launch a rocket using JavaScript. So it was connected with internet, with websites, with surfing by that days, but not now. Using the latest and greatest APIs of modern browsers, we totally disconnect this idea. So now JavaScript, or also let's say web platform in general, this is not something about internet, not something about being connected, not something about surfing websites, but it's about creating applications and running this application. So it's one of the best, if not the best platform to build and run and use apps in general, in very, very general sense. So this way, we can make sure that our JavaScript will work on the moon, where maybe internet is not very reliable, if it exists at all, without any problems, right? So this is web platform. It's no longer about internet. It has enough tools to address all this connectivity stuff, right? So we just write our latest and greatest apps. Okay. So what's wrong with JavaScript and with JavaScript-based apps and with again this whole environment? So let's imagine that we started to create an app to launch a rocket. So we have rocket.js file. We started to do something, and if this is more or less complex app, what would we do? We do some NPM installation, and this is how 99% of web apps start nowadays. And this is what I want to avoid when we create some serious app, because you know this joke, the heaviest objects in universe, like elephant, like whale, like black hole, and npm modules folder. So for literally hello world app, you can download 300 megs of something. But and yes, even when we are talking about the size, definitely we would like to use these megabytes for something better for our research needs or something like this. But even not taking into account the size, we just downloaded some megabytes of some code, and we don't have any idea what's going on in that code. You'll find a couple of interesting articles on Medium about someone tried to explore what's really popular NPM package really install as dependencies, and you will be surprised. I will not spoil, but maybe we could give these links later. So the summary: we doesn't control the code we use from NPM, and there could be intentional or unintentional bugs, backdoors, whatever. And this is something we cannot afford for such a serious project, right? What else? And maybe let's go back to some technical details. I think that application which is sending our rocket to the moon will be quite large and complex, and definitely more than one developers, or even maybe more than one team of developers will work on this. And this is one of say not very convenient moments in JavaScript as a language. Very technical issue. There are no strict types in that language, which makes working on large apps, really large ones, and multi-team work way more complex than it could be. So I would go for TypeScript in that sense. So this is superset of JavaScript, which gives more strictness to the language itself. Of course, it limits us in some dirty tricks that we can do. But for projects like this, I would prefer being very strict, and so literally we have to control each byte of what we deliver. I believe this is all from me. Any questions? I would like to elaborate on any point, or you could disagree. You or it's my pleasure to discuss, and I could be not always right, of course.
Yeah. Well, look, if I hang on a minute. So yeah, a lot of that has just gone straight over my head, and I cannot pretend to answer an intelligent question or challenge you on anything. But we are gonna. This video is being recorded. We're gonna share it out afterwards, and so I would encourage people to leave some comments down below on maybe some of the ideas that Maxim had that maybe you agree with or disagree with. But I will sound very stupid if I try and challenge you on anything there. So you gave a great answer though, and I think now we've got 3 different opinions on the different challenges that you might face with this, and some of the weaknesses as well. So we've got some quick fire questions that people have sent to us before we began today, just about JavaScript. These were the topics that people wanted to talk about that we decided weren't as funny as launching a rocket with JavaScript. So Maxim, seeing as you are on the line, can I ask you, are progressive web applications replacing native applications?
Yes, to some extent. And I can say what serious folks from Gartner research think about that. So they say that by 2020, so in a couple of years, progressive web apps will replace 50% of customer-faced native apps. So this is quite specific category, but I believe this is the largest category of mobile apps, and for really many cases we can save on hiring 2 mobile teams, on proposing our apps to app stores, so we can just create web app, and this will work fine for us, and this will have almost the same functionality. So yes, I believe that progressive web apps will replace serious percentage of native apps, of say regular native apps.
Sure. Okay. I'm going to mute you, Maxim, just for one moment while Sebastian answers, because the wind is almost louder than you sometimes. So Sebastian, same question for you. And also, if progressive web applications are replacing native apps, why?
Well, I mostly second what Maxim said, especially because there are just a few cases where apps are only out there because there is no viable alternative. I mean, why would you have an app for reading a blog post? Well, because up until now, there was, or let's say a year ago or 2, there was no way to have that content offline while you're traveling in a train or on a plane and being able at your hand when you want to read it, when you actually have the time. The web wasn't just able to provide that functionality. So there are a lot of apps that should have never happened in the first place if the web had the capacity back then than it has now. And so I think a lot of apps that are really just not necessary can happily die, and we can happily use the web for stuff like reading blogs, which just belong in the web, or your mobile ticket app, which, well, I mean, what you have, you need offline storage capabilities, and then you can store your train ticket in your browser, and that's all you need. So you don't need an extra app for that. And so yeah, I second Maxim's answer. There are a lot of stupid apps that will hopefully die, and we can embrace the web for what it was actually meant to be.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. So, Gessen, I'll pose the same question to you. What do you think?
Well, I think that past year.
Sorry, Gessen, I can't. We've lost your audio. I'm going to have to ask you to. Here we go. We've got you now. Can you? Sorry. Can you start again?
Well, I think that the past years we experienced the emergence of progressive web applications, and this is due to increase in hardware accessibility to hardware capabilities by applications, and this PWA allows us to create more engaging user experience along with cheaper dev and more user engagement. But I don't think this means like the death of native applications, as businesses will always try to engage with users and reach users in any environment. So I think most businesses will keep providing support for native apps along with PWA, and they will provide support for any kind of app that will allow them to engage more with users and reach more users. There are users that can be reached with using PWA, but we cannot also forget about users that cannot reach them with PWA, but we can reach them with native apps. These users we need to keep to reach them in order for our business to thrive. So I think PWA are growing and are booming because the market is booming. So they are having bigger share in the market. But I think native applications will still have their share of the market.
Sure. So you feel that they will coexist. Whilst PWA will grow, there will always be a need for native applications somehow, somewhere.
I think if we have OSs, then we'll have native apps. As long as we have operating systems, then we have native apps that will run over these operating systems.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting. So there's another question that we got asked a lot, and this was about front-end programmers or JavaScript programmers that wanted to introduce more modern frameworks and libraries, but they couldn't always do it. So they want maybe a perspective on what the business benefits are of upgrading to a more modern JavaScript framework. And I guess, Gaston, you would probably be a good person to answer this.
I think that JavaScript frameworks would offer like tremendous help in delivering high quality apps. They are allowing us efficient team collaboration, more code organization, easier testing. I think to use a JavaScript framework, it is really important, and it will bring and enforce business standards in building JavaScript applications. So in order to approach the business owner or anybody with how in using a JavaScript framework, you need to emphasize on enhancing user experience and being user reachability, and thus JavaScript frameworks will be centric in building any modern web application.
So that's interesting then. I guess the advice people can take from there is, consider the user. If you're making a case for investment in training on new languages or in introducing new frameworks, maybe the business doesn't need to know about the benefits to them, but if you can pitch them a progression in their customers' experience or what the user is seeing and feeling, then hopefully a good business will think, yeah, users come first. Let's go for it.
Exactly. I think you need to approach 3 points: user experience, cheaper development, and time delivery. and you are solved.
Yeah, I think you go to any businessman, any company director, and you show them, hey, this is how we can save money. They're going to be nodding pretty quickly. Nice. So another interesting question we got, this one, Sebastian, is for you, was a phrase I'd never heard before. It was micro front end. And this guy said to us that microservices is a clear progression for large back-end systems. So why are there still so many monolith front ends?
Well, first of all, because you just simply can't compare server side to the front end world, I'd say, like 101. And I also think like there was a lot buzz and fuzz about microservices in the past, let's say 5, 6, 7 years. And everybody started on doing them and so on. But even nowadays, we see like the post hype, where even on the server side, maybe people regret their decisions for billions of microservices, and sometimes also go and revert back to more monolithic things. And yeah, it's always about the balance. The question is why do front-end frameworks seem monolithic? Because I don't think many of them are. They're very well designed to do one purpose. Let's take React. React leaves out many things that you can do with other micro libraries you can just plug into. And also, even if you take a look at it from the perspective of the size, like the kilobytes that library takes to download, I don't know, for React, I think it's like 70-something kilobytes, which, I mean, if you go full performance, seems like a lot, but actually isn't. If you think about what 70 kilobytes are, it's, well, something that you could fit like in a few dozens on an old 3.5-inch diskette. And I mean, maybe those front-end frameworks seem monolithic, but actually I don't think they really are. Most of them are.
This is a matter of perspective than reality.
And yeah, I mean, you have frameworks with different parts. Even like 10 years ago, you had Backbone that was a tiny library that just did a few things to improve the lives of developers and therefore enable them to deliver better apps. Tiny thing that just did a few things quite well, and then you could plug in whatever you want to do your specific task. And even, I think even earlier than Thomas Fuchs did set up a website called Micro.js, which is a list of a lot of tools and tiny frameworks and libraries that just do one thing, like routers, or you want to manipulate URLs. There's a library for that. You want to have a templating language. Here are the libraries, the tiny ones. And that was always a big strength of frontend JavaScript, that you can just plug things together. And I know, I mean, how much more micro can you get than this, actually, serving that in just a handful of kilobytes? So yeah, I think matter of perspective, we have micro front ends and not monolithic beasts.
Mm-hmm. An interesting take. I think probably people can maybe learn from that. So we've got one last question, and then I think we're going to wrap it up, because there is a chance that Maxim will be drowned in a storm or miss his flight. And this last question is for you, Maxim. So it's a deep, bold question. Do you picture a future where JavaScript becomes so powerful that JavaScript backend developers replace front-end developers, and they replace them basically with drag and drop interface design features?
This is really good one, and you know what I would ask totally differently. Will JavaScript be so powerful that front-end developers will replace back-end developers? So I think this is closer to reality. Plus, we already have this perfect Node.js, where say maybe not front-end developers but JavaScript developers can write really nice backends using the language they love. Yeah, so this is my answer. And if to answer exact question, I'm not believing in some kind of constructors. No, the craftsmen from some software will always find good jobs.
Good, that's interesting. So we've actually just had someone message in a question, Thomas Muntz. He wants to know how to implement continuous integration, but with much less effort. So who would like to answer this question, I guess, first?
The question is, what's his effort right now that he wants to go have less of that? I think we're pretty well set up with continuous integration tools like Travis and the connectivity to popular systems like GitHub. And well, all you actually need is a handful of NPM scripts, and you can basically do whatever you want without really having a lot of hassle, I'd say.
Okay. Well, there you go, Thomas. You got an answer to your question. So I think that pretty much wraps us up. So thank you again so much to the three guys that joined us this evening to talk about this crazy thing of launching a rocket with JavaScript. If NASA ever decides this is what they want to do, then they can come to me as the recruiter and they can hire you three guys. So I hope everyone that watched it has enjoyed it. If you're not watching this live and you're watching this recorded, please share it. Comment your questions below. I'm sure Maxim and Gessan and Sebastian will be interested to see the comments that come from this afterwards. And if you want to see another one, just like the video, because if you like it, we're going to make more. We might even do one next month about a deep learning platform in JavaScript, which sounds equally crazy and weird. So yeah, thanks again so much to you guys. I'm going to end the broadcast now. And to everyone, have a good evening.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you later.
I'll go to try to catch